So I'm here today at Black Lake in Preddvor in Slovenia. Now, as you've just seen, the lake is still partially frozen, and unfortunately, if we look at the sky, it's completely blue. No clouds whatsoever. But that's not going to deter me. When you've got no clouds, then you just have to focus a bit more on the foreground and the mountains, maybe include a little bit of sky, but not too much, because the sky itself is not very interesting, I should say. So to start with, I found an interesting little composition, so let me show you. Okay, so this is the composition I found. Now, as you can see, as I said, there's no real interest in the sky, so I focus more on the foreground, finding something interesting. And those lumps of snow make some nice foreground interest. And I've chosen a vertical composition to really frame it in nicely with that foreground ice and snow and that lovely mountain peak there. That mountain peak is called Storžič, one of the nicest peaks in the Kamnik Alps, and it's snow covered and really a nice contrast against the brown of the hills where there's no snow there. And that little bit of blue sky. So you can see I've included some of the blue sky, but not too much, because otherwise it would be pretty empty and boring. And I've used, you can see I've got on the front here a case K9 filter holder, and inside that I've got the polarizing filter. Now the polarizing filter really helps to darken that blue sky. If we turn the polarization off, you can see how now the sky is much lighter, and that snowy mountain peak doesn't stand out as much as it does against the blue sky. So if we turn back the polarization, now you can see how, because it's darkened the blue sky, now that snowy peak really stands out beautifully against that blue sky. So the polarizer is a fantastic filter, one of the best filters. Never leave home without it. It's something also you can't really replicate in post-processing. I've also got a 3-stop soft grad on there to, again, because the foreground now is very dark, you can see that there's no light falling on the foreground. It's now in the shade. Foreground is in the shade, but the distant mountain peak and sky is still getting light from the sun. So the balance between the two, if we take that filter off, again, we now see that where the sky is overexposed. So the filter, the grad filter, helps to darken down the sky, and so if we move that up just about right. So the grad filter helps to darken down the sky and the mountain peak and balance the exposure between the foreground and the sky itself. So now I'm focusing on, you can see I'm focusing on that lump of snow there in the foreground. I've got f11, ISO 200, 1/10 of a second. And there's my shot. I'll stick that up there now for you to see. So now, as you can see, we're losing the light on the foreground here. The sun is dipping quite low. It's maybe about an hour before sunset. So I'm going to head over to the other side where there is some light, and there's still some nice soft light falling on the other side of the lake. So let's head over there and see what we can get. So as you just saw, there's some lovely light falling over there, but not really much in the way of interest to make a photograph. So I've decided to focus again on Storžič mountain. And here is my composition. So here's my composition. There's still a little bit of light coming from the other side. The sun is pretty close to the horizon now. I think quite close to sunset, although there won't be much of a sunset because there's no clouds. So still, there's some nice light falling on the path here. A little bit of soft light falling on the trees there. You might be able to see it a bit better from here. There we go. So some nice soft light falling on those trees over there, adding a bit of colour. And again, some nice light falling across the forested hills and that mountain peak. Now, again, I'm using the polarizer and I'm using the 3-stop soft grad. Now you may notice that I've got the grad on, but I've angled it or tilted it over slightly. If we look directly across the camera now, you can see that the grad is tilted. And the reason for that is because this part of the sky is much brighter than this part, because the sun is over there and it's setting over there. So of course it's much brighter over this side of the composition than it is here. So it's a useful little trick to angle the grad slightly, so you put more emphasis over here and less emphasis here where it's darker. So there's a useful little trick for you. So basically, now I've lost, you can see the interesting light that was on the foreground now. Now the sun's gone much lower, I'm going to lose that foreground light. And because there's no clouds in the sky, it's not going to be really that interesting, so I'm definitely not going to stick around for sunset. But the shot I got a little earlier was the nicest shot from here. Nice bit of light streaking across the foreground. The path itself was lit nicely, so I think that was the best shot I'm going to get from here. I'm not going to get another one now, so I'm not going to bother. I've lost the light on the foreground now, so now that's rendered the foreground pretty much uninteresting. And all that's left really now is the light falling on the mountains and the mountain peak. So the next best thing to do is stick on the telephoto lens. And what I've done this time, because the peak of Storžič right now is looking beautiful. We're very, very close to sunset, and there's some lovely soft warm light falling on the peak itself. So I've gone right in close, pretty much 400 millimeters. Let's have a look at the composition, shall we? So at 400 millimeters, I've gone right in close to that mountain peak. Now, don't you just love the power of the telephoto lens? It's beautiful up there. Some lovely soft light falling on that mountain peak, and the snow, still some snow there, it hasn't completely melted, and framed tightly against that lovely blue sky, I've got a beautiful, beautiful composition. So I'll stick this up there now. So I hope you found those tips useful, and if you did, please give this video a like. Please subscribe if you're new to the channel, and check out my other videos too. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye bye.